I had a really good experience I had kind of an amazing experience in the lead up to the publication of the book. There was a lot of excitement about the book from the publishers and a big advance and a lot of kind of media craziness and then it was a photo shoot and this and that, and I was a really young guy, and it was
Big deal.
an exciting time for me. And then
You're not that old of a guy now, I add.
well, after the book came out, it was a rough time for the book to come out and to fly around the country and to try to do a tour about the book. The Savage Girl was a book about a woman who becomes a trend spotter and has a bunch of adventures it's a fun book where she moves to the city to save her younger sister Ivy, who's a schizophrenic fashion model, and so it's kind of a broad
I like
side
those words together. I don't know why.
Against like just a lot of thinking about the positive and negative aspects of consumerism, and it had elements of being a satire, and it was a funny book, and it was a rough time for that kind of book to come out.
Yeah.
But since then, I've had really great experiences with people who found their way to the book, and so.
We actually did have another friend who got a book come out just at the same time.
Who was that?
Bill Ayers.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was really bad timing for him. But nonetheless, it got a New York Times Notable Book Award, and what we're really concentrated on is this tome, Luminarium.
Well, I got to say, I read this book from cover to cover. Sometimes I would practice my speed reading. And then go back over things a little bit. I really enjoyed it. It took me about 25 pages to get into it, and it is a long book by my standards. And but it really was is quite wonderful. And it's one of the thoughts I had when I read it was, I like the story, and I'll let you fill us in on the story a bit, but I also was kind of reminded of being in classrooms all through junior high, high school, and college, where I'd read something and I like it, but then all these other people had all these real deep meanings and symbolism and stuff, and I said, oh, geez, oh, yeah, that's interesting. So it's full of kind of higher meaning, I think, in many ways. It addresses religion, addresses technology, entertainment, military, and a lot of politics in it in its way, without being overly political in its presentation. Why don't you give us a little synopsis of the book, what you think it's all about, since
Sure.
you wrote it.
Sure. And thanks, by the way. So Luminarium's about a guy named Fred. And Fred is 30-something. He's had a wild success in the dot-com era when he started a company with his twin brother George and also his younger brother, and the three of them started this great software company, and they were all set to take over the world. And then after 9/11, their funding got pulled, and over the next few years, Fred's wife left him, and his brother got cancer, and the book starts in 2006, 5 years after 9/11. George, Fred's brother, is in a coma, and he's and he seems to be dying, and Fred is broke. His company's been stolen from him by this military
entertainment.
Yes, it's a military simulation industry which took over his company, and it was his company was this originally this virtual world for children, and then it got taken over and turned into a training ground for the U.S. Army, a kind of a virtual training ground. So anyway, Fred's life is a mess, and then he starts getting messages, emails, and texts, and other messages that claim to be from George, who says he's trapped in a kind of limbo for angels who don't believe they're angels, and he. And so Fred is wondering what's going on, and then he enters this clinical trial where they put an electromagnetic helmet on his head. And the idea of the scientific study is that every week they give him a different kind of peak spiritual experience by means of electromagnetic waves that manipulate, that stimulate different areas of his brain and give him. So the first week he has this out-of-body experience, and he immediately has this oneness experience with his experimenter, who's a woman named Mira, and he just gets.
I knew he was going to fall for her.
Oh yeah, I like the two of them together. I was waiting
I'm
for
about
him
20
to, you know.
I'm about 30 pages into the book, so I knew he was going to. Okay, I knew it was going to go that way.
Yeah, some interesting stuff happens between them.
So, I mean, there's a bunch of things that you just mentioned. I want to. I mean, the concept of military entertainment complex.
Yeah.
What a brilliant thing to actually point out.
Well,
are you a gamer? Were you a gamer?
A little bit, yeah. Well, you know, I have to. I have an addictive personality, and so when I play games, I'll play for a few hours, or maybe
hours.
blow a whole day on it, and then I'll have to break the DVD.
I have that with TV.
So yeah, the military entertainment complex, you know, that's an actual thing, and I got the idea for this company from a guy I knew who actually ran, had started up a virtual world for children that after 9/11 their funding dried up, and they started following all the war dollars coming from the government that were after September in 2001. There was a kind of a boom going on in Orlando, Florida, and the reason it took place in Orlando was because it was a combination of game companies and the military has
Disney
a huge
World
presence down there, and Disney Imagineers, and so all this talent got together and created this thing called the military simulation industry, and the programmers started calling it the military entertainment complex, and I thought that was an incredible, just an incredible phenomenon.
Admitting of what it was. So. You read it, Michael. You've got probably a couple things on your mind.
Well, he answered one. I mean, one of the things was it's about New York City a lot, but then it flips to Florida. But you kind of explained that because it actually was a real deal down there with all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to know, were you? There's a lot of sort of science and electronics and technology and those kind of things in it. Are these things that you kind of grew up being interested in? Did you study a lot of science, physics, electronics?
Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up at a time when computers were just starting to enter the home, and my first computer had 1K, and which is I mean today it's what that means is like 1,000 characters or something, and that's all it could do, and I still had fun just playing with it and inventing things. So I felt I grew up at the same time that computers were growing up. And it was when I was in high school, I had this job. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I went to a school called Stuyvesant, which is
Bedford-Stuyvesant.
But Stuyvesant's in Manhattan. But it's it was just kind of a neat public school in the East Side and Lower East Side of Manhattan, which it subsequently moved. But I got this gig while I was in high school, reviewing computer games, which for a kid was a lot of fun. And
Jeez.
And I went on to be a writer, but a lot of my really good friends went into gaming and went into the computer industry and programming, and so I always had, I was always kind of living a double life through them, and was always really fascinated with what they were working on. And
well, it certainly feeds your whole school to bring into a book. I mean, to have a foot in each world. You know.
Yeah.
One of the things
I dare say you'll have another foot in another world for the next book.
Yeah. Well,
one of
that's
the
one of the
things-
fun things about
writing.
One of the things that
Right.
Russ pointed out, our friend Russ Bradford, and he, what did he tell me that I wanted to? He basically said that the twin in the book was an addition.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a story about that? How that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the process, I'm sure, of editing and rewriting. So you've got the twins figure in the book in sort of spiritual ways too, I think.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about the twin aspect of the book.
Well, so when the way that I write, it usually takes me a couple of drafts to actually figure out what my story is. I'll you know, the book, I mean, that's one of the fun things for writing about me is that the book ends up becoming smarter than me in a way. Like, I'm not really
I
smart
love
enough
that.
to write a book.
I love that.
But just the process of getting through a draft teaches me so much about what I couldn't have even imagined the story really is about and what's really at stake. And once I get to the end of a draft, then I realize, oh damn, I got to rewrite this whole thing.
Really?
I got to start from the beginning and redo it.
So the writing of it taught you what it was supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Ooh, it's cool.
It's and that's it. That's why I learn from it and I grow, and that's why I choose to write about things that I just can't stop thinking about, and so George, the twin, who ended up being the center of the book. I mean, he's not the main character,
Right.
but his story really pulls the whole plot along and is really kind of the spiritual heart of the book. He was actually one of the last things to come into the book, and I with the book, the previous draft was a couple hundred pages longer, and it was just a big book that wasn't quite fitting together, and then I had the idea for George, and I thought, oh no, I can't add another thing to this book, but it ended up helping
Tying it all
everything snap together, and I immediately saw what could go and what needed to stay, and it was just one of those great experiences that you sometimes that you hope for as a writer.
Before you added George, and it just sort of came together, what kind of input does your editor have on it? Were they raising these kind of questions, or?
Well, that was
This was
part of
your
the
brilliant
saga with my last book, the Savage Girl. Was that not only did the book come out right after 9/11, but right before 9/11, my editor died and of cancer, and my then a couple years later, my agent had a meltdown and got addicted to drugs and left the business, and so I was totally on my own for many of the years of writing the book.
How many years did it take to write
It took
this?
me 10 years, but it was
Wow.
Yes, it was
Worth it.
I teach also, and I sometimes I don't tell my students that, because when I tell my students it took me 10
Where do
years.
you teach?
I teach at the University of Illinois down in Urbana-Champaign.
Oh,
so
nice.
I live here in Chicago, and I go back and forth.
Well, let me tell you, as a literary Chicagoan, it's really nice to have somebody who moved from Brooklyn to Chicago and is still writing. And thank you.
I love Chicago. It's
Hopefully it'll provide
Chicago, actually, when I first moved here, my first thought was, hey, this is kind of like Brooklyn. You know?
Yeah.
Like it really does have that neighborhoody
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I've felt that too.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of questions. One, do you remember when the idea for this book first hit you? And then I would like you to follow it up with what ideas you're mulling around with for your next project.
Sure. The first impulse for the book was when I read an article about a Canadian researcher who had claimed to have invented a helmet, and it looked like a motorcycle. It was just a modified motorcycle helmet that he had wired up.
Was it shiny gold?
No, but
Sorry, that was an inside joke. Read the book.
Fred's helmet is a sparkly gold
Yeah, sparkly.
motorcycle helmet. But one of those vintage kinds. But
Bell.
He just lost himself into the helmet, folks. It'll be a while. Come back,
come
Alex.
back to so my original idea came from this Canadian researcher who invented this helmet that he claimed would give people the sense of a divine presence when he turned the power on. And so I thought about that, and then I just kept thinking about it, and I thought, well, what if the helmet could do this too, and what if the helmet could do this too, and I started researching it, and so it has, my helmet can do a lot more than this guy's can, but it all has a basis in scientific, research, and I did a lot of research to get the theory right of what regions of the brain were involved, and the more research that's done, the more of this stuff they're finding they can actually do, and so the question becomes, well, is it what is our experience then? Is it just some medical aberration, or is there something deeper? And Fred goes on this journey where he has to confront a lot of these things, and where just this idea of there's so many things that are going on that are toxic about there's fundamentalism and terrorism on the one hand, and this kind of dogmatic